Hello, my name is Rowlands. I'm a nutritional balancing practitioner, and this is the EMF sensitivity deep dive. I suffered from EMF sensitivity 5 years ago, and it was one of the most difficult experiences of my life. When I was going through them challenges, I had many ups and downs and a lot of confusion. I just didn't know how I was turning most of the time. Luckily for me, I managed to find something that helped me heal and overcome EMF sensitivity. And through that journey, I have learned so much about EMF frequencies, how to heal them, how to heal it in others, how to get away from them. And basically what I wanted to do was create a deep dive video with all the information that I have to date on what is EMF sensitivity and how to overcome it, and basically my story. So what I'm going to cover in this video is things like, what is EMF sensitivity? It's usually a big one for people. The technical aspects of EMF frequencies, because one of the problems with EMF sensitivity is you've got all these different frequencies and it's so hard to understand them a lot of the time. So hopefully I'm just going to boil it down with some simple ideas and understandings on what these frequencies are. I'm going to talk about how EMFs affect people. I'm going to talk about why people get EMF sensitivity, because I think that's a bit up in the air at the moment. I'm going to talk about my own journey, my own story, how I got it, where I went, and kind of how I overcome it. Then I'm going to talk about how to heal from it. In reality, you can't really heal from EMF sensitivity because it just hits you all the time, but you can get to a place where you don't feel the frequencies, although they are having an effect on the body somewhat all the time. So I'm going to talk about how to reduce using various different things, how to reduce from the outside. I'm going to talk about things that work, things that don't work, because I think that's a really confusing area as well. And then I'm going to talk about how to heal from the inside, what's important, what you need to do from within, because a lot of people out there really know how to protect themselves from EMF frequencies, but they don't really understand how to heal the body from the inside so that they don't feel the frequencies anymore. I'm going to show you some trends on a hair mineral analysis test. So that's what I work with. I work with hair mineral analysis. We get graphs back from hundreds and hundreds of EMF sensitive individuals, and you find general trends throughout, which is really interesting. I'm going to talk about some testimonials from people all around the world that have had EMF sensitivity, that have started a nutrition balancing program and have overcome it. And then finally, I'm going to talk about some of the reasons why people cannot heal on other healing programs. And that's a really important topic because there's so many healing programs out there. Not a lot of people really get to the crux of EMF sensitivity and heal it for a variety of different reasons, and I'm going to talk about all of them as well. So I understand that this video is probably going to be a long one. Sit down, enjoy, take it step by step if you need to. If you're really struggling with watching videos, as I'm sure you all are, if you are EMF sensitive, I do have a video that I'm going to put in the description on how to use a computer when you've got EMF sensitivity. So click the link below. Alright guys, thanks for watching and hope you enjoy. So what is EMF sensitivity? Now, it's a difficult one because EMFs came about, in the 80s, 90s. But in the beginning, it was small. You maybe just got EMF frequencies from radio signals, or kind of telephone wiring or house wiring, but it was quite low level, really. And a lot of people that was kind of growing up in the 80s, 90s generally also had better health. There was less toxins around. There was actually less stress for the most part. It wasn't running around all day, less pollution. So EMF sensitivity wasn't that major. However, as time has gone on and you have things like 3G, 4G, Bluetooth, Wi-Fi routers, detect phones. The amount of radiation in the environment is colossal. Billions, if not trillions times more than what it would be in just the natural world out in the forest. So a short definition is electromagnetic stress is the subtle or not so subtle effects of stray or chaotic electrical and magnetic fields on the human body. That's basically what it is in a nutshell. Now you have different ranges and different types of EMF frequencies, and in the beginning when I was healing, I remember all of a sudden I figured out I'd got EMF sensitivity, and I was like overwhelmed by how confusing the frequencies were. You know, you've got microwave frequencies, and you've got low EMF frequencies, and you've got harmonics, and it was like, when you're going through that, it is just so confusing. So in the next section, I'm going to kind of simply go over that. I'm not going to go too deep, because really you just need the main aspects of what the frequencies are and the symptoms. So hopefully that's going to give you a better idea of what EMF frequencies actually are. So EMF sensitivity symptoms can be quite far and wide. I remember when I first discovered I had EMF sensitivity, and it was fairly simple because I just bought a new MacBook Air, which I'm going to talk about later on in the video. But I got this overwhelming sensation of like irritability on my skin, like red rashes on my skin, headaches, insomnia, like as if my skin was kind of crawling. It was really a horrible sensation. I have wrote some symptoms down here that a lot of people suffer from. So people get a hot head feels hot, dizziness, pain when they're using the cell phone. They get an intense head pressure, constant fatigue that doesn't seem to fix itself, like a wired feeling. Probably heard of the term wired and tired. Light sensitivity, headaches, tingling, prickly skin, rashes, stomach pain, gas, loose stool, high blood pressure, stiff neck, joint pain, tightness and stiff muscles, a metallic taste, dark eye bags, bad eyesight, anxiety, irritability. The main ones are like insomnia, rashes, anxious feeling, wired feeling, heart racing when you go near things like Wi-Fi routers, computers, that sort of stuff. So in this section, I am going to talk a little bit about the electromagnetic spectrum. Now I'm going to try and keep it quite simplified for you guys, because I know that this sort of stuff can get super confusing. Now I remember when I first figured out that I had EMF sensitivity, and I was really overwhelmed by how complex it was to understand all this stuff. In all fairness, it didn't make it any easier. The fact that I was struggling with all of these symptoms, and then all of a sudden I had to realize that I had to go on computers and read information to make myself more aware and wise up to these frequencies and what they mean, and how I can overcome them, how I can test for them. So I remember just being totally overwhelmed and frustrated, and it just really, kind of put a nail in my coffin a little bit, another nail in my coffin, because I was just like, this is getting ridiculous now. So much things to deal with and to worry about, and now I've got to understand and figure out all this stuff. It was really, it was really demeaning. I think I was at a real low point, probably my lowest point. When I had to figure out all this stuff out while dealing with the EMF sensitivity. So I'm going to talk about it on here, try and make things a little bit more simplified for you guys. Cool. So the first thing, and in many ways the most obvious thing, is the visible light spectrum. So the visible light. This is the visible light here, and visible light is basically the light that we can see. Now, if you go above that one, this is where the waves of the electromagnetic spectrum start to get smaller. And further down, the waves of the electromagnetic spectrum increase. Now, a lot of people focus on mainly radio frequency radiation. So the radio frequencies are around here, which include radio waves, microwaves, infrared radiation. And generally, when you hear about people speaking about EMF sensitivity, they generally talk about the radio frequency range. So radio frequency EMFs are also called RF radiation. As the name implies, these are high frequency EMFs in the range of 10 megahertz to 300 gigahertz. So this is around here, 10 megahertz to around 300 gigahertz. Now, a lot of people focus on this one because they believe that that is the most problematic frequencies for people that have got EMF sensitivity. And in many ways, they are correct. But it is important to realize that it's not just the radio frequencies that are the biggest problems. When I first started, delving into all of this stuff, I only focused on the radio frequencies, and I was rummaging around, and I went onto a website to buy a bed canopy, and I didn't have a lot of money. I was in Thailand. I was pretty low on funds, really. To say I was, leaving the country. I didn't have particularly a job, and I ended up spending a lot of money. I think maybe £1,000 on a bed canopy, and when it came, I put it up in my bedroom, and although it improved my EMF sensitivity a little bit, it didn't fully rectify it, and I was still struggling with my sleep. So that was another nightmare, and that's when I came to understand about the low frequency EMFs. So here we are. Low frequency EMFs. So the low frequency EMFs are sometimes called ELFs, or extremely low frequencies. And these are in the range of 1 to 300 hertz. And this category of EMFs is mainly transferred through wiring, and they relate to the electrical power systems. So I didn't understand this because it's so confusing to understand EMF sensitivity. In the beginning, all I was focused on was the radio waves. And yeah, you can understand when I'm completely buzzed out and super sensitive to the frequencies. In many ways, you just can't delve into everything because you've got brain fog, you can't think straight, and it's just an absolute nightmare. So in the end, I actually made myself a Faraday cage, which was grounded. So the main ways really to deal with these two bands of frequencies, for the radio waves and microwaves, generally what people will use is a Faraday cage. So a Faraday cage is basically a metal container Let me just write down Faraday cage here so you can see. Faraday cage. So think of it a little bit like if you think of an aeroplane. So if an aeroplane's flying through the sky, you're sat inside the aeroplane, and basically you're surrounded by a metal cylinder, some conductive material cylinder. And we all know that if a lightning bolt hits the aeroplane, you would not actually feel inside because it would cancel itself out. And this is how a Faraday cage works. So when the microwaves and the radio waves hit a Faraday cage, whereby it's a conductive material that basically wraps around itself like a full circle, what happens is the negative electrons go one way around the cage, and the positive ones go the other way around the cage, and they end up at the bottom and they cancel each other out. And this is basically how we get away from these radio frequencies. And when you got like a bed canopy, it kind of works on a similar fashion. As long as you got to realize that bed canopies are going to go around the bed, so the bottom of the bed is not necessarily covered. So if you're living on a ground floor, for example, you can put the bed canopy around the bed, and it will work because it creates a full cylinder, including the ground. But if you was living on the first or second floor and you put on a bed canopy, actually the radio frequencies can come up through the floor and inside the bed canopy and cause problems still. So you would need some sort of ground mat on the floor of your bed if you're on like the first or on like the second or third floor, basically not the ground floor, so that the bed canopy and the ground mat are completely connected to each other, and that allows this kind of spherical boxed shape where the frequency can cancel itself out. That's basically how Faraday cages work, and the main way that people try and overcome radio frequencies. Now, the problem is that my bed canopy didn't actually cancel out the low frequencies, the low EMF frequencies, or the extremely low frequencies. And this was a big problem for me that I was totally unaware of. The thing is, with low frequencies, they can actually pass through things like a Faraday cage. The way to... So, low frequencies. So the way to deal with the low frequencies is to basically ground the... if you ground a Faraday cage, then basically what happens is these frequencies, the low frequencies, when they hit a conductive material, they kind of like, they just pass straight through them. They can kind of amplify themselves, which is quite dangerous. But what they're wanting to do is they're wanting to find a way to the ground. So the way to deal with low frequencies is if a low frequency is hitting a conductive material like aluminium, if that aluminium is somehow connected to the ground with maybe an aluminium wire or some aluminium tape or something else that's conductive to the ground, to earth, then the low frequencies are going to basically hit the conductive material and ground themselves into the earth. So in order for like good protection in the bedroom, I had to basically create a Faraday cage. So I had to create a full box, which I will show you how to create in this video as we move forwards. So to create a Faraday cage, but I also had to ground my Faraday cage to the earth in order for me to deal with the low frequencies. Now, what's interesting is these down here, ionizing and non-ionizing radiation. Now, in the so-called scientific world, they only believe that the electromagnetic frequencies that are ionizing are actually harmful to biology. So the ionizing radiation is basically anything above the visible light spectrum. So you're talking ultraviolet, X-rays, gamma rays. I mean, we all know that they're bad for the body. And so basically, ionizing radiation, so what is it? So particles called quanta are transmitted through electromagnetic waves. Some electromagnetic waves have so much quantum energy that they can break down the bonds that hold molecules together. This creates molecules with unpaired molecules termed free radicals. So the free radicals in themselves are not dangerous, but if there are too many of them, they are believed to be responsible for cancer, aging, and a variety of other diseases. These EMFs are called ionizing radiation. The examples are cosmic rays, radioactive material, X-rays, gamma rays, etc. So quanta at low energy levels, quanta at lower energy levels that cannot break molecular bonds create non-ionizing radiation. Examples of electromagnetic fields with a long wavelength and low frequency include microwaves, electricity, and radio frequency fields. So for many years, the kind of scientific world has told us that the non-ionizing radiation is pretty much safe. But we can see from everyone that suffers from EMF sensitivity that this is unfortunately incorrect. A lot of individuals who apparently have EMF sensitivity, when they get away from things like the low frequencies and the radio waves and the microwaves, their symptoms improve. Now, I used to tell people when I had EMF sensitivity, if I walked into someone's house, I was so sensitive to the EMF frequencies that I could actually say to a person where their router was in their house because I could feel the direction of the waves hitting my skin and burning my skin. So that to me it's not in my mind, because I can actually tell someone where their router is, or even kind of telephone wiring, radio, TV masts, etc. I could actually feel the direction because I would get a burning sensation on my skin. Now, the Bioinitiative report said in one of their articles, not everything is known yet about the subject, but what is clear is that the existing public safety standards limiting these radiation levels in nearly every country of the world look to be thousands of times too lenient. And from what I can gather is that this new wave of technological advancements in 3G, 4G, radio frequencies, infrared, etc., has become so huge that, in my opinion, if it really genuinely came out that, these frequencies were really harmful to the body, which they are, then the industry would, the whole world would probably collapse, because these frequencies are so intertwined. with our lifestyle these days and our lives that, yeah, basically it would be an absolute disaster for them. But we obviously need to deal with that, and the only way that we can kind of deal with it now is from a local perspective. From we've got to deal with the issues ourselves as human beings, and to get away from these frequencies in order to protect ourselves, because there is no other way, because I don't think that this is gonna settle down anytime soon, to be fair. So I'm quickly just going to talk about the fields a little bit. So we've got like two fields, which is the electric field, and so hold on a minute. So we've obviously got the electro in electromagnetic and the magnetic. Two slightly different things. So the electric field is made basically by variations in voltage. So the field becomes even stronger at higher voltages, and an electric field will still exist if there is no electric current running through it. And then you got the magnetic field. So the magnetic field is the field created through the natural flow of electrical current. As the current becomes stronger, the magnetic field grows stronger as a result. So the electric field is made by differences in voltage. The higher the voltage equals a stronger field. Field strength decreases with distance. Field strength is reduced/weakened by building materials. Field strength is of constant strength. The field exists without electrical current flowing. And then magnetic fields are made by natural/man-made electrical current flow. Greater the current equals a stronger field. The field strength decreases with distance. The field strength is not reduced by building materials, and the field strength varies based on power consumption. So basically, the more intense the electric field, the more voltage that goes through it, the bigger the magnetic field. And people are affected by the magnetic field as well as the electric field as well. So you've basically got to get away from all of these different fields if you're gonna reduce your EMF sensitivity. So hopefully that's kind of helped you somewhat. I understand that it's complex. The main thing you need to realize is that you've got the electromagnetic field, you've got the electric field, you've got the magnetic field, you've got the radio frequency radiation, you've got the low EMF frequencies. Understand that scientists telling us that non-ionizing radiation is fine, when in reality that's completely false, in my opinion. So thanks for watching this section, and I'll see you on the next one. So in this next section, I'm going to talk about why people get EMF sensitivity. Now, sometimes this is difficult to communicate exactly why people don't get this and why people don't get that. I'll give you a simple example. Let's say you injected mercury into someone, and for whatever reason, you might pop it into 10 different people. The first person, they ingest mercury, and for whatever reason that mercury sits within the brain. The second person, the mercury might sit within the knee joint. The third person, it might situate itself in the liver. You've give that person mercury, but 10 different people have 10 different symptoms. One person's got neurological issues, one person's knees seized up, another person's liver damaged, another person's got IBS because it's been stuck in the digestive tract. You don't really know all the reasons why people might get the EMF sensitivity. Some people might have been exposed to a certain chemical at a certain period in their life that's just wore down the adrenal glands so much, and this is what's happened. Some people, you know, the argument is a lot of the time when people smoke, it's like, well, you know, Jean's smoked down the road, but Jean's not had any problems with herself, and it's a really weird way to approach things. Everyone's different, and everyone gets different things based upon just their biochemistry, their history, their genetics, what they eat, how healthy their mother was when she was pregnant, you know, and then you got traumas to deal with, so everyone's vastly different. But what usually happens in terms of EMF sensitive individuals is and I've spoke about this before, but your body's a little bit like balancing wood, a plank of wood between two rocks. And over the years, you put bricks on top of this plank of wood, and each brick represents some form of stress. It might be junk food, it might be a relationship breakup, it might be late night sleeping, it might be a childhood trauma. And the body kind of bends under stress. You know, the body's quite good at keeping itself treading water, really. And some of the ways the body deals with stress is, one way is for it to go into something called fast oxidation. So the oxidation rate is a little bit like metabolism. If you're under stress, it goes into fast metabolism to try and deal with the stress. But this wears out the body a little bit. It might have happened, you know, when you see a child, for example, if a child falls down, it'll scream, it'll go into this fast metabolism, you know, the face will get red, the blood is going around the system, and then, you know, the body deals with the trauma, but then it might go to sleep, for example, to replenish the energy that it's took to deal with that specific trauma. So the body deals with stress by adapting and, you know, increasing adrenal hormones and increasing the detox pathways, for example. But if the body's not properly nourished and the lifestyle's not good, and this goes on and on and on and on, instead of the plank of wood kind of bending, and then the brick will fall off because it's, you know, balanced itself, just more bricks come on and on and on and on and on, because the body's just constantly under stress. It's losing minerals, it's losing hormones, it's losing various chemicals it needs to survive. And after a while, what the plank of wood will do is, it only takes one little thing. Some people come to me and say they just smoked a joint, they just had a heavy night drinking, they had a bereavement, they had a relationship breakup, and then literally overnight, it can happen overnight, this plank of wood just snaps. And as you can imagine, getting a plank of wood back together again, it's a very tricky situation, because the body has now gone into survival mode. It's gone into a survival mechanism. And basically the body has to survive now, so it's no longer can sustain this fast oxidation, it no longer can sustain the pedal to the metal kind of approach to life, so it switches to slow oxidation. It's just sluggish, you know, its vitals, it starts to focus on the things that's going to keep it alive. People start getting cold, people start getting eczema, the detox pathways will stop because that's not a survival mechanism. So then you'll get an increase of toxic metals, and then you get a snowball effect. Some people develop cancer, some people develop bipolar, some people develop, you know, things like psoriasis, some people's hair fall out, some people get EMF sensitivity. That's just how it goes. So yeah, once this has happened, the body's burnt out, the adrenal glands have burnt out, and we need some good adrenal hormones for that cell permeability that I'm going to talk about in the next video. The cells start to become less permeable, they start to become hardened, and you can get something called a calcium shell. which I'm going to speak about in the next section on hair mineral analysis. Other things that happen is the body will start to use its stress minerals up. It starts to use its reserves up. These are generally called kind of the sedative minerals, the minerals that kind of put a lid on people's bodies when it's going under stress. So things like calcium, magnesium, sodium and potassium, they all get stripped in the body, and this tends to give rise to something called copper toxicity. Copper toxicity basically happens when the body's under stress. Copper will tend to rise in the body for various different things. The adrenal gland's not working right, low zinc, liver toxicity, all of these increase copper toxicity. Copper toxicity causes so many problems, it is actually unbelievable. It causes many symptoms in people today, ranging from things like migraines, Tourette's, skin problems, low libido, PMS in women, racing mind. Generally, it accumulates in people that are more spiritually orientated, people that are more empathetic, people that are kind, caring and compassionate. It's a kind of female mineral that's kind of soft and malleable, but it basically gets out of balance in most people. Now, I will talk about it in the next section, but copper is a conductor of electricity, and obviously it just turns your body into an antenna, which is pretty serious. Then you just get it's just like a pinball of different things will start to happen when the body's out of balance. You get things like candida overgrowth. So candida is basically a fungi that's in the stomach. It helps to regulate the gut flora, but this tends to get out of balance when you've got copper toxicity. The reason being is that copper is needed in balance to control candida. And when candida increases, you can get brain fog, and interestingly enough, there was a study done that if you emit electromagnetic frequencies onto candida, it grows quicker by something like 2000%. It's quite amazing how this can happen. So that's basically in a nutshell. What I want to get through in this particular video is that everyone's different. So two people might have been exposed to the same toxins, same chemicals, but for whatever reason it's just situated itself a bit differently in somebody's body. And whereas one person might not experience EMF sensitivity, that person might experience schizophrenia instead, for example, because just the way that all these toxins have been shifted around someone's body, whereas someone else would get EMF sensitivity. Now, in the next section, I'm going to talk about specific things on a hair mineral analysis test that people with EMF sensitivity tend to have. It's going to be a really interesting video, so I hope you watch it. Thanks for watching this section. Thanks. So in this video, I want to talk about trends on a hair mineral analysis test. So this particular individual came to me and they were suffering from severe EMF sensitivity. Now, when I looked at their hair mineral test, their test was basically a prime example of some of the things you will see on a hair analysis test when you're suffering from EMF sensitivity. So I've picked this particular one out. This person, as I say, had extreme sensitivity, and this as the hallmarks of someone who's going to be suffering from EMF sensitivity. When I evaluate these tests, there's mainly 6 main things you can see on a hair test with people who suffer from EMF sensitivity. Usually you're probably going to see 5, if not 6 of the different factors involved. So the first thing, and I've highlighted it here, is this calcium level. Now, this is what we call a calcium shell. And if you can see here, this particular level is 151. So it actually goes off the chart. So we call this a calcium shell. And basically what happens is when a person is under severe stress, the body will raise tissue calcium. And what happens to the body is the body basically creates like an eggshell around itself as a survival mechanism to protect people from the outside world. And it causes a person to become withdrawn, it causes a person to become emotionally numb, it causes someone to be very out of touch with their personality and who they are as a person. And these people can be living inside this shell for years and they're not even aware of it. But basically what happens on a biochemical level to do with EMF sensitivity is the cells tend to harden, so they become less permeable. And what happens is the EMF frequencies can't move through the cells, and what happens is the cells start to vibrate. Now, if anyone's seen tiny aphids, for example, when they're exposed to EMF radiation, they vibrate because the EMF frequencies are moving back and forth. And basically that kind of happens in a human body as well. And it's even worse with someone who's got high tissue calcium, because the cells basically become hardened like a ball of, like an egg, basically. So it's very hard to permeate. The next thing is a high copper. So this particular person here, as you can see, has a very high copper level. This is at 6.4. This is probably the thing that increases EMF sensitivity more than anything, is copper toxicity. And the issue with copper toxicity is, one, it's not very well understood. Two, hard to test for. This is one of the only ways of testing for it properly. Three, sometimes it's at a low level on a test. But with our experience, we know we can read the test as like a whole, as like a story, and there's certain factors that would tell us that actually a person is copper toxic. It's just not showing on the hair analysis test, but we call that something called hidden copper toxicity. Copper causes a myriad of different issues. It's very much related to women's reproduction. So when women are going through their periods, they tend to get copper toxicity problems because the copper rises every month, and you get things like insomnia, headaches. For men and women, they're getting shakes and bipolar, schizophrenia, Tourette's, racing mind, OCD, skin issues are always related to copper toxicity. Severe migraines, you name it, copper tends to have a role. And in EMF patients, what is important to understand is that copper is a conductive material. So when copper is high within the body, within the cells, basically it acts as a giant antenna. And people are just vibrating. They're basically an antenna for all these EMF frequencies. And as you can imagine, this causes massive issues for people. When I removed copper or balanced copper properly within my body, my EMF sensitivity improved drastically. And we see that throughout people that are doing nutritional balancing. This is a key factor for anyone that's suffering from EMF sensitivity. I would say now, from my experience, I have not seen one person with EMF sensitivity that doesn't show some signs of copper toxicity, whether it's like this or whether it's hidden copper toxicity. So this is a major factor with people who suffer from EMF sensitivity. The next thing to look at is sodium and potassium. So this ratio is out of balance at the moment. As you can see, let me just find a line. The sodium potassium is not balanced. It should be pretty straight, pretty balanced, straight, but as you can see, it's on a big angle. So this person's exhibiting a severe imbalance in their sodium potassium ratio. Now, what's important to understand about this particular pattern is that sodium and potassium are the body's electrical signals, basically. They produce a positive and negative charge inside and outside the cell, and in order for electricity to properly run through the cells, this ratio should be balanced. This one's severely out of balance, so it's basically firing incorrect signals that are not properly balanced throughout the system. So this also increases people's sensitivity to EMF frequencies because the cells are not properly charged inside and outside the cell. So if we move down here, we start to see toxic metal readings. Now, this aluminium level is 3.79. This is huge. Again, for anyone who knows anything about electromagnetic frequencies, aluminium is also a very heavy conductor of electricity. So this person is basically acting as an antenna with the aluminium as well. As many people will know, aluminium is used a lot for things like antennas on radio machines and inside phone telecommunication systems. I remember when I used to get a bad signal on my TV, I would wrap aluminium around the aerial and I would get a better signal. So it's a very, very good conductor of electricity. Anyone that's suffering from aluminium toxicity will also have things like forgetfulness, memory loss, kind of a dumb feeling in the brain. It's seen in people that have got things like Alzheimer's, and it's just it's a very kind of sinister metal to be high within the body. So this is another big indicator of EMF sensitivity. The same here with mercury. Mercury is also a conductor of electricity. So this person's got three conductors, big conductors of electricity, that's all toxic on their Hen mineral analysis test. Mercury, as many people know, is a massive, massive poison for the human body. I think it's like the second deadliest poison for a human. So you should not be seeing any form of mercury within the body. It's not used for anything. The same with aluminium. So mercury, it basically just turns people a little bit mad. They become a bit crazy. It's just a poison, and it just does horrible things to the mind, makes people feel suicidal, depressed, jittery, anxious, and obviously as well with people that are suffering from EMF sensitivity, it's a big, big problem. So the kind of final thing that I want to talk about is just the fact that this person's a slow oxidizer. So basically, oxidation is a little bit like metabolism. The best way to think about it is if you're a slow oxidizer, you're in kind of like the slow lane of a motorway or a highway if you're American watching this. And basically the body is just running at a really slow level. The engine is just chugging over. The person can't get through the days too well. And this causes the body to become kind of sluggish, hard, not very permeable, and the frequencies just cause havoc in someone that's basically in slow oxidation. So people that are in fast oxidation tend to have better cell permeability, so they tend not to feel EMF sensitivity as much as the people who are slow oxidizers. So that's it, but really I could say a lot more about this test for other reasons. Aside from EMF sensitivity, you could look at this phosphorus level here and see that this person is not feeling very vital at all. Phosphorus is a good indicator of vitality. This one's very low. Manganese is high. We call people that have got manganese, that have got high manganese, they tend to have something called manganese madness. Sends people a little mad. If you think about Alice in Wonderland, the Mad Hatter, he would be someone who had manganese toxicity. This person's got very low iron. I would hazard a guess that this person is anemic, but they probably got something called copper anemia, which is another subject altogether. Their magnesium also causes somewhat of a shell. Again, a little bit like an eggshell, which is not healthy at all. And then you got things like high nickel. High nickel has a lot to do with suicidal tendencies, suicidal thoughts. This person's also suffering from what we would call high blood sugar issues or blood sugar intolerance as well. So that's aside from EMF sensitivity. As you can see, the hair mineral analysis is excellent at not only looking at trends in EMF sensitive individuals, but also in other things like personality issues, heavy metal toxicity issues, vitality, blood sugar, all that sort of stuff. So that's it for hair mineral analysis trends. Thanks for watching this section. So in this section, I'm going to talk about my journey with EMF sensitivity. So when I first started the nutritional balancing program, I didn't realise I had EMF sensitivity. I was so ill. I had around 50 different symptoms, ranging from extreme fatigue to extreme derealization to severe skin problems, ear infections, headaches, visual snore, floaters, light sensitivity. I was unaware of the damage I'd done to myself, really. And what tends to happen in nutritional balancing and healing is that the body will heal itself in layers. So the body kind of is a little bit like an onion, where there's layers built upon itself, and as you heal a layer, this other layer underneath kind of rises to the surface, and you heal that one, and it rises, heal that one. So for me, it was about a year, maybe a year and a half into the program. In the beginning, I wasn't too diligent on the program. I was trying to figure it out. I was using I went to a different hair analysis lab. I was just figuring everything out, basically. I had heard about EMF sensitivity, and what I'd done, I'd end up moved to Thailand to try and heal myself, and I ended up buying a MacBook computer from a shop, and I think it was this. I could start really feeling the EMFs from this computer, and I'd already had insomnia and all that sort of stuff and tingling sensations, but I never really linked it to EMF sensitivity. But getting this computer, I felt that all the symptoms that I had, but it increased. So I was like, oh wow, this computer's doing something to me here. And that's when I started to realise, wow, I suffer from something called EMF sensitivity, because I'd read about it, and that's when things started to make sense to a lot of symptoms that I was having: skin rashes, insomnia, wired sensation, tingling sensation on my skin, burning sensation, heart palpitations. So I ended up moving back to. I was in Laos and I was at this time. I was like, oh my god, I can't believe that there's something else I need to deal with. I just had so many issues. It was just like another hit over the head with a brick. It was just the worst feeling. And I ended up going back to Thailand because I was going to work with a nutritional balancing practitioner and try and heal in Chiang Mai. And I ended up getting this temporary flat in Thailand, and I was really focusing on the EMF sensitivity. I could really feel it because I knew what it was, and I just wasn't sleeping whatsoever. I was just like, I was on the top floor of this accommodation and I just wasn't sleeping. Insomnia was just horrendous, and for whatever reason I went out onto my balcony one night and kind of looked up onto the ceiling, and there was a huge phone mast literally above my head, and it was just dreadful to see that. And that's when I really realised, wow, I've got a serious EMF problem here. I couldn't look at mobile phones, I couldn't look at laptop screens, and I was in the middle of a city in Chiang Mai, and I thought, I need to get away from here. And me and the practitioner in Thailand, we was driving around Chiang Mai, and I found one accommodation that was in a block of flats, and it was full of EMFs, and that didn't work out. Just couldn't sleep. It was horrible sensation. It's 24/7, just tingling, insomnia, headaches, just burning sensation. Whenever I would go near a computer, it would come out in rashes. Couldn't stare at a laptop, couldn't stare at a computer, couldn't stare at a TV that was across the room from me. It was just a real low point in my healing journey. And I ended up finding this lovely little B&B. It only had 4 rooms and 1 Wi-Fi, and I ended up staying in there. And I still couldn't sleep with the Wi-Fi, just 1 Wi-Fi in there. Tried all sorts of stuff, ground mats, clothes, and I realised I used to sneak up to the Wi-Fi box in the middle of the night and switch it off. And as soon as I switched it off, I managed to get some sleep. All the sensations would disappear. It got to a point where I was so sensitive to frequencies that I could actually go into someone's house and I would know the direction of the frequencies because I could feel it pulsing on my body. That's how bad it got. So I ended up thinking I need to get some sort of canopy. One thing I remember doing was just trying to search on the internet what all the frequencies were about, and all I was hearing was radio frequencies and low frequencies and hertz and gigahertz and this and that and whatever and microwaves. And when you're in a position like that, you can't even read a computer, let alone try and figure out everything that's going off and what all the frequencies mean and what protects it and what not. And then I think what really saddened me is, I went onto the internet to find a bed canopy, and you read the bed canopies on the internet, and they'd say 99.9% protection, and you're thinking, wow, well, this must be great. I'll buy one of these bed canopies, and I ended up buying this bed canopy. It cost me like £1,000, which I didn't have much money at the time whatsoever. And the bed canopy came, and I tried it, and could still feel the frequencies. I mean, it reduced a little bit, but could still feel it. And I was like, what the hell is going off? This is horrendous. Like, I've just spent £1,000 on this bed canopy. Why is it not working? Like, am I going insane? Is it not the EMFs? And then I realised that actually in the lingo of EMF frequencies, the 99.9% related to something called decibels. And when you worked out the math, it actually equated to something like 15% protection or 10% protection. It was disgusting. 99.9% equated to something like 15%, and if you added another 9 onto that, 99.99, it kind of went up by 5%, and 99.999 kind of went up. So if you wanted a good canopy, you had to get a canopy that said 99.9999999 protection. Absolute scam. What a horrendous thing to do, actually, without properly explaining it. Can you imagine people in that situation who are severely struggling with EMF sensitivity, and people are selling them bed canopies saying it's got 99.9% protection without explaining the electromagnetic lingo that they was attaching that to? It was horrendous. So that didn't work. I tried Mylar sheets. That just made things worse. So in the end, I ended up making my own canopy. I ended up making my own Faraday cage, and I remember thinking, this is the lowest point in my life where I had to go out and build myself it was basically a box. It was a prison. It was like a dog cage that I had to sleep in, and I basically made it out of solid aluminium sheets. So I made this box out of solid aluminium sheets. One end was made out of chicken mesh. And so that Faraday cage managed to block out the radio frequencies and microwaves. And in order for me to block out the low frequencies, which I realised the bed canopy only fixed, it didn't fix anything. It only reduced the radio frequencies minimally. In order to reduce low frequencies, you have to use specific materials, and you have to ground it. So I ended up grounding the Faraday cage with some aluminium tape, and that went out into the garden, which I drove I think it was a copper or an aluminium rod into the ground and connected the tape up to the rod. The design for my Faraday cage I actually made into a video, so I'm gonna add the link in the description for you to check that out, to build one yourself. I remember sleeping in there. There was no air in there at the beginning, so I ended up waking up in the middle of the night. I couldn't breathe because of the air circulation wasn't right, so I basically had to buy a little fan, put the fan at the end of the Faraday cage where the chicken mesh was, and have a fan going all night to circulate some air within the Faraday cage. And that Faraday cage, bless it, was actually as horrendous as it looked. It allowed me to detoxify all the crap that was making me sensitive to EMF frequencies. So as I was doing the nutritional balance, so I had to do two things at once here. I had to remove myself from the frequencies by being in a fairly rural environment and in a Faraday cage. At the same time, I was doing the nutritional balancing program to detoxify and rebalance all my minerals, which was just as important, really, because if you don't do that, you're basically stuck in a Faraday cage for the rest of your life, which is not any way for a human to live and sleep, really. So over the months, my body would improve. I would get setbacks, and I would move forwards, and then I would detox and this and that, and I needed that Faraday cage to basically allow me to go through a copper detox. You could see on my hair analysis test, my copper went through the roof, and I remember getting, my symptoms increased as the copper was flowing around my bloodstream. But I remember that was a big turning point for me. Once I removed that copper, things really started to improve, which was very, very, very welcoming. So this was around, I think this was around the 2-year mark into my healing journey. Bearing in mind I've been doing this now for 8 years. So, and then it was a gradual improvement in my health by doing the program, doing the detox, doing the meditation, rebalancing. I reckon around the 3-year mark, 4-year mark, I was pretty well on the way. I didn't have EMF sensitivity, but I do remember that if I didn't take kelp, which was part of my protocol, then my symptoms would come back. And then if I would take kelp, then they would disappear again. So I knew I was kind of getting towards the end of complete healing from EMF sensitivity, which was a definite blessing for me. So now that I'm 8 years down the line, happy to say I have not experienced EMF sensitivity really in the past 3 years. I can't remember. There has been times where I've not took kelp over a prolonged period for various different reasons, and my EMF sensitivity didn't come back. I do make an effort to stay away from frequencies. I'm not kind of one of these people that will go out my way to be around them anymore, but I can work on a computer, I can watch TV, I can be in malls and flats, and I can sleep in an EMF environment. I can do everything. I'm basically normal now when it comes to EMF sensitivity, and I am truly, truly grateful, because I had a severe case of EMF sensitivity that really, from starting the program to kind of fully overcoming it, did take me a good few years. I don't want to come across as if this is something that can be fixed overnight, but it's permanent fix. And I also fixed 40 other symptoms, which I'm very much grateful for. So that's it for this section. In the next section, we're going to talk about how to heal EMF sensitivity. So catch you soon. So in this next section, I'm going to just talk about a few popular EMF meters that I would recommend for you guys to purchase in order for you to do some readings at home. Now, what's important to realize is that the electromagnetic spectrum is quite large. You've got the low frequencies, higher frequencies, and what we call intermediate frequencies. So often you need more than one meter if you want to measure all of the nasties when it comes to electromagnetic frequencies. But probably by far the most popular one really is a good starting point is the tri-field EMF meter. So these meters are basically for the general public. You can buy much more professional instruments which are much more precise and accurate, but they invariably will require some deeper technical knowledge. So these are ones that I recommend for people that are suffering from EMF sensitivity. So this is the new tri-field meter. So yeah, the tri-field EMF meter is an AC Gauss meter, an AC electrical field meter, and a radio power density meter in a single unit. So this is measuring three things in one. So it measures AC magnetic, AC electric, and radio frequency and microwave fields. The good thing about this meter is it's simple to use and it's multi-directional, so you don't have to turn it around to try and focus it in on the frequencies. It just works wherever when you put it in your hand. So this is a good all-rounder if you're wanting to measure things in particular like radio frequencies in your house and electrical meters. It's kind of a good 3-in-1. But if you're concerned with like lower frequencies, the lower frequency range, then this doesn't do that good of a job. You're probably going to need a different meter for that one. So here are the features. So AC magnetic mode from 40 Hz to 100 kilohertz, electric mode 40 Hz to 100 kilohertz, radio frequency mode from 20 megahertz to 6 gigahertz. That's quite high. It's on a 3-axis, adjustable backlight, etc. So as I say, that's a good 3-in-1 for AC magnetic, AC electrical, and radio frequencies. But if you're wanting to measure lower frequencies, which, you know, when I ended up buying a bed canopy, I thought that it would cover everything. What I didn't realize was this particular one didn't cover lower frequencies. So this is the ME303OB meter. This is an easy to use electrical magnetic field meter. It can measure AC fields ranging from 16 Hz to 2000 Hz and magnetic fields from 0.001 to 1.999 microtesla. This meter is a single axis or monodimensional meter with sensitivity to AC electrical fields at 1 volt per meter. So what you need to do with a monodimensional meter is you've got to kind of focus the meter in where the frequency is coming from. So it has an antennae that you need to like point in the direction where the frequency is coming from, unlike this tri-field meter, which will just pick up, you know, frequencies all around itself if you're inside a room. So yeah, the good thing about this meter is it's good for measuring low EMFs, what we call ELFs, and it's a good alternative to the tri-field. It's generally more accurate for all readings, but particularly in respect of electrical fields by virtue of the use of a ground cord which is supplied. Unlike the tri-field, it also gives an audio signal, which is makes it easier to use. The downsides are that it's monodirectional, as I've just explained, so you need to turn it around to get readings. And it has a limited frequency range. It only detects AC fields in a low frequency band, 16 Hz to 2 kilohertz. So there could be intermediary or high frequency fields in an environment that this meter will not show. The tri-field measures in the range of 30 Hz to 100 kilohertz, but its lack of accuracy and precision can be misleading. For your money, the ME303OB is better suited to electrosensitives for the accuracy. Alright, so the next one is a cornet. This meter measures both radio frequency radiation and magnetic fields and has an audio function which makes it easy to use. You can use it to measure radio frequency radiation from sources like cell phones, smart meters, cell phone towers, Wi-Fi routers and networks, cordless phones, WiMAX, digital TV transmissions, wireless burglar alarms, and wireless video games, etc. It can measure radio frequency radiation from 100 megahertz up to 8 gigahertz. It has 3 modes for radio frequency radiation: decibel, milliwatts, microwatts per square meter, and volts per meter, which is kind of overkill. The volts per meter setting is all you need for personal use. It can also measure magnetic fields from sources like power lines, transformers, and home appliances. It measures magnetic fields in the frequency range of 50 Hz to 1 kilohertz, which covers most things, and measures from 0.1 mg right up to 600 mg. What I like about this meter is that the tri-field is that, like the tri-field, it's multifunctional. But unlike the tri-field meter, it has good sensitivity and accuracy for measuring both radio frequency radiation and magnetic fields. However, it can't measure electrical fields like the tri-field and the ME303B. So that's it for the kind of meters. There's loads more really. For a general all-rounder, the tri-field's pretty good. If you want more accurate readings, you probably want a combination of the ME3030B and the Cornet. So the last thing I want to talk about is these stetsometers. So the stetsometer is basically to measure intermediate frequencies. So there is a lot of ignorance about the dangers of intermediary frequencies or dirty electricity, even amongst electrosensitives. I was ignorant on this issue too. When you live or work in an environment where there is electricity, this electricity doesn't stay in the wiring and it is radiated out into the room. So this comes from computers, lamps, wiring in the walls, light switches, all sorts of stuff. So the electricity doesn't stay in the wiring, it is radiated out into the room. It seeks out a path of least resistance to return to the ground. Your body is an electrically conductive object, and as such, this electricity is attracted to you. If you spend time in an environment where there is dirty electricity, then the potential for harm is increased. Dirty electricity can be defined as high-frequency voltage pollution, called harmonics and transients, on electrical wiring. In layman's terms, it means things like cell phone chargers, TVs, computers, dimmer switches, compact fluorescent bulbs, surge protectors, etc. These cause an interruption of electrical current flow, which introduces harmful intermediate frequencies into your electrical system. And ground currents may also be a source of dirty electricity. So the GS meter measures these harmonics and transients present within the 4 kilohertz to 100 kilohertz frequency range. The GS filters filter out intermediary frequencies in your electricity supply in the range from 4 to 150 kilohertz. So that's what you need to do. You need to measure using the meters, and then you can buy GS filters to add into your household if you are showing signs that are above 50. So that's it for this section. I don't want to go into too much details on these because it can get overwhelming. But in general, you want a mixture really between, one of these 3 meters, a combination of these 3 meters and some GS meters for you to be fully equipped. So in this section, I'm going to talk about some testimonials. Now, it's important to realise that the Nutritional Balancing Programme has been going on for around 40 years now with massive refinement, and there's been tens of thousands of people that have gone through the Nutritional Balancing Programme. So there's likely to be a lot more people out there that have got a lot of help from the programme and have healed themselves that I'm unaware of. But I'm going to go through some of my clients. I picked out some of the kind of best ones for this film, different people with different experiences. But yeah, hopefully I will be putting some sort of testimonials playlist on YouTube at some point, so which will be helpful. So the first one, I just want to say thank you for your work. My EMF sensitivity has dramatically decreased while being on the programme. Although I was not expecting the initial Htma reactions in the beginning of the programme, I am glad I got through them, as it certainly helped my body remove the toxins that were holding me back. I went from not being able to use a cell phone to being able to play with my son on his iPad without any issues. So for anyone interested in knowing what a Htma reaction is, that's basically a healing reaction. It stumbles most people up on any healing journey. A healing reaction is basically when a toxin is removed from a storage site in the body and it finds its way into the bloodstream and causes temporary symptoms that are not very nice. Luckily for this person, he got through them, and as a result, he can now, play on his iPad with his son, which is nice to hear. Obviously, when you're healed from EMF sensitivity, it is a wise idea to try and stay away from the frequencies, just because they're harmful, whether you can feel them or not. Alright, so the next one, I was first put into contact with Lewis through a YouTube video, probably the video I did on healing EMF sensitivity from the inside. Initially, I wanted to heal my derealization, but realized I also had EMF sensitivity after starting the program. My copper levels were initially not showing, but I was told I had hidden copper. 8 months later, I went through a big copper detox, and my symptoms improved drastically since. So this happens quite a lot. A lot of people don't realize they got EMF sensitivity in the beginning. This was my issue. I didn't realize I had EMF sensitivity. I started the program for other reasons. And as I unwound the layers, basically, I realized I got EMF sensitivity. So yeah, that's quite common. All right, I started the Nutritional Balancing program 3 years ago, initially in a large calcium shell. Lewis explained the issues and told me it's likely contributing to my EMF symptoms. I thought I was just emotionally insensitive, but realised that biochemically I'd been out of balance for years. When my shell was reduced, I started experiencing emotions I had never had before. My EMF symptoms also improved as the shell was coming down. I spoke about a calcium shell a little bit earlier on in the video. Basically, a calcium shell is when the calcium on the hair analysis is very high. This basically creates like an eggshell around a person and creates cells that are not very permeable, which means that the EMF frequencies can't permeate the body very well at all, which causes EMF symptoms. So yeah, when the calcium shell comes down, not only do you re-experience emotions, re-experience various personality traits that was hidden, but you also improve things like EMF sensitivity, which is obviously excellent. And the final one, it's one time I was suffering from extreme EMF sensitivity. I could feel negative entities around me and going through me. I couldn't walk in public. I slept in a tent for a year. Since starting the program, many of my symptoms have gone, including my EMF, although it will return slightly if I'm stressed. It took me a while, but I'm very glad I stuck to the program, even through the hard times when I was detoxing. Nutritional balancing is literally a lifesaver. I was at my wit ends. Now, obviously, this particular person was on the extreme end of the scale, like most people, really, and they ended up taking specific measures like sleeping in a tent, which I believe was a real big thing for them to do, that allowed them to get that rest by and allowed them to detox and heal. Luckily for this person, had lived in a warm country, so that helped a lot, obviously with living in a tent, but it just goes to show how extreme you have to be sometimes in order to to heal. I didn't sleep in a tent, but yeah, I obviously made a Faraday cage, which felt like I was sleeping in some sort of cage. It was some sort of like dog kennel. It was really horrible, but you've got to go through these, unfortunately, in order to get through the other side. So luckily this person did what needed to be done, and as a result they came out the other side much better off. In this next section, I'm going to talk about protection from EMF frequencies. Now, this is a bit of a minefield as well, to be honest, and when you're suffering from EMF sensitivity, it's a nightmare to try and figure out what the best solution is or what to do. So hopefully I'm going to give you some advice, some kind of, no frills, no BS advice, just on my experience with clients, and basically what I think works best and what I don't think works too well. So a good thing is if you want immediate relief. So I remember when I was suffering really bad, what I would do is I would go and have a shower, or have an Epsom salts bath, because it tends to dissipate all of the frequencies, basically grounding all the frequencies from your body. Go and have a shower, go and have an Epsom salts bath, and that will give you some immediate relief. The best thing to do ideally is to have a bath and then go and get in the Faraday cage, go and get a powerful bed canopy or a Faraday cage. I'm going to talk about that a little bit in this video. And you know, generally I would be able to get a good sleep, because I was like buzzed up with EMF frequencies, with EMF radiation. Go and have a shower, get all the frequencies out of my body, or ground all the frequencies again, jump in the Faraday cage, and I would generally get a much better night's sleep. So that's kind of an instant relief if you're really struggling, you know, straight away. So what you want to be doing in your house, one of the reasons why I did the meter video is, if you've got meters, you can go around and check, you know, basically how powerful certain things are. You know, if you're looking for a house or anything like that, I would 100% go and take a meter, go and check around the area, go and, you know, if you see a phone mast, if you see wiring, if you see, you know, 5G or smart meters or anything like that, then that's obviously going to be a big red flag. If you haven't got meters, like, you can use your phone, if you've got a smartphone, or ask someone else to help, then generally you can use one of them. You can use, you know, you can search for Wi-Fi. So if you're in an area and you turn on Wi-Fi on your phone, obviously, you know, it's not very good if you're an EMF sensitive, but you can try and get someone else to do it, or, you know, if you want to just do it really quick. But if you've seen like 10, 13 or even 5 routers that you can pick up, then obviously that's not a good sign. Your phone also can pick up electrical and magnetic forces. You can download EMF apps, which will allow you to test magnetic forces, test low frequencies, and obviously you can test for radio frequencies by Wi-Fi and stuff. So depending on what phone you've got, I know on the iPhones and Androids you can download EMF apps. So for anyone that can't afford a meter or whatever, then you can kind of use that. But obviously you're going to be using a mobile phone to use it, so you can understand the difficulties there. But in general, you can go around your house and use, you know, your meters, etc., to test various appliances, test the walls, etc., which will give you a much better indicator of what things are kind of pushing out EMF frequencies. Now, I will tell you now from my experience, and just, you know, this is just a fact, the best way to deal with EMF frequencies is to get away from them, to stop them. So if you can't move house, you know, well, I know people that go and sleep out in tents. I know people that use like a camper van to help them out. But when you're in the house, you know, try and remove it. When I was suffering, I just switched off the fuse box. It's not worth it. Usually at night time, I would definitely switch off the fuse box. The problem is if you've got a fridge, freezer, but generally if it's off for 7-8 hours, you know, especially if it's winter like in England, then you don't have any issues. But you got to use your creativity a little bit, really, in these situations. But in general, it's just, life becomes so much easier when the fuse box is just off. You know, if you're suffering from really extreme sensitivities and you want to, you know, keep the fuse box switched off a lot of the time, then go out and buy like a gas stove so you can do your cooking. It's handy really to have a gas stove anyway, to do your cooking. Or you could use a fire, wood burning fire, that sort of stuff. But that's just the best way really, is to get away from it. Unplug. If you've got your electricity on, which I assume some people are gonna do that, then if you're not using any appliance, take out the plug. You know, even if it's on standby, take out the plug. Plug out your TVs, plug out stereo systems, turn off radios, all that sort of stuff. Just get away from it. One good thing to do is use Ethernet if you're using the internet. Use Ethernet. Ethernet is the wired internet cable. Turn off your Wi-Fi. If you haven't got a router that doesn't allow you to turn off Wi-Fi, then get a new router. It's as simple as that. My specific router that I use for internet, I can turn it off by logging into the router on my computer. You can log into it, you can turn off the Wi-Fi in there. So I keep my Wi-Fi turned off and use Ethernet in my house. I use something called a Memon device. Now, I was super skeptical about these in the beginning, but I found that they do actually work. The technology is really complex. It uses scalar technology, but it's basically a company, I think they're from Germany, and they have created various appliances that help the body deal with EMF frequencies. So the company's called Memon. What you can do is you can get plugs for your home where you plug in the device and it basically neutralizes a lot of the EMF. I had a Memon, you can get them for phones. So I had a Memon for my phone that you stick on there, and I couldn't believe it. I could definitely feel the difference. I couldn't feel anything. When I plugged in my Memon to my house, I ended up going through detox reactions because my body was feeling much better from the EMFs. You can get huge Memons for hotels, for big houses. You can get them for your water system. Again, the technology is quite complicated. It uses liquid quartz, and basically it neutralizes the negative effect of the frequency. Now again, I was super skeptical about all this sort of stuff. I would tell you now that most of the pendants, most of these so-called EMF neutralizers don't work, but and on heart, this one seems to do a really good job. So check them out. It's called Memon, M for monkey, E-M-O-N. Type in Memon EMF, you'll find the website. The plugs are quite expensive, but in general, I quite, if a company sells, I don't know, you can just tell the expenses because the technology is quite powerful. A lot of my friends use Memon and they all say that it's really, really good for helping. The reason why I mention it, because you know it's so hard to get away from EMFs, and I don't recommend a lot of the shielding. This plug will tend to neutralize a lot of the frequencies, a lot of the harm that the frequencies do. So it's really useful if you can afford one. Plants tend to be quite good at soaking up EMF. This sort of stuff, it's not going to eliminate EMFs, but I'm giving you guidance on things that 100% will help. Plants, cacti especially, tend to be very good at soaking up EMFs. They're not going to be, it's not going to be the wonder pill, but in general, if you can afford it, then get your house surrounded by plants. I mean, it's good for the brain as well. It's good looking at greenery. Energetically, it's good as well. So, yeah, I would recommend that. Remove microwave ovens. You don't need a microwave. They are harmful, not only because they're giving out radiation, but they're also harming food. If you microwave your food, you're going to be eating terrible food. So just get rid of them. Learn how to cook your food without microwaves. I've not used a microwave now for 7-8 years. They're not needed. Get rid of them. Remove anything cordless. Cordless phones. You got to be careful these days because we're going into the smart era. Anything that's got smart on it, Alexa, Google Home Hub, washing machines these days are smart washing machines. They've got Bluetooth, wireless, fridge freezers, anything that says smart, definitely probably it's more smart to stay away from it. So, talking about smart meters. They're very, very harmful. Try and get your energy supplier to remove the smart meter. Tell them you don't want it. Even if it's going to cost you a little bit more, it's definitely worth it compared to your health, compared to what it will do to your health. The other thing to do is to try and shield it, which is difficult because one, the smart meter frequencies tend to be very powerful. Two, shielding things is difficult to do. I'm going to speak about that a little bit more for various reasons. And three, if you end up shielding it properly, then the smart meter is not going to work, not going to do its job because you're going to block out the frequencies. So it's a difficult one. As I said, I'm going to talk about shielding a little bit further down in this video. Anything like lamps, house wiring, extension cords. In general, these are emitting electrical frequencies. The best thing to do is to obviously either unplug them or to stay away from them as much as possible. The safest distance really is probably about 4 foot. 4 foot away, the frequencies are going to diminish massively. So if you need anything turned on, then I would try and stay away from them as much as possible. That includes radio frequencies as well, but radio frequencies can travel much further. Things like Wi-Fi, 3G, 4G, 5G, etc. The lower frequencies, they don't travel as far. So even sitting 2 foot away from this laptop, which I'm at now, is much safer than being, having your desktop computer here. So just try and get away from them as much as possible. But the best thing to do is just turn them off. Next is Faraday cage and canopies. Now, a Faraday cage was a lifesaver to me. For anyone that doesn't know what a Faraday cage is, it's basically a fully sealed box that's electrically conductive. A good thing to think about is actually an aeroplane. If you think of an aeroplane, the whole shell of an aeroplane is a conductive material, usually something like aluminium. And if a lightning bolt hits the aeroplane, the people inside will not feel it. This is because of the Faraday effect. It's the same with anyone that's sat in a car. If you get hit by lightning, you're not going to feel it because of the Faraday effect. Basically, the positive and negative charge from the electricity frequency, EMF frequency from the lightning bolt, the positive charge will travel one way around the conductive material, the negative charge will travel around the opposite side. They'll hit each other and cancel each other out. That's basically how a Faraday cage works. So, briefly, Faraday cages and bed canopies. I would recommend people to build their own Faraday cage. The benefits are, one, it's going to be better protection because you can make something solid. You're not going to buy bed canopies that are solid material because it just doesn't look good. It's not really aesthetically pleasing. It's not very good breathability, etc. But it's much better to build your own Faraday cage because you're in control of it. It's going to be more powerful. Now, I made a video on how to build a Faraday cage, how I built my own Faraday cage. It's out of solid aluminium. One end was made out of mesh and I put a fan in there to get some breathability. The benefits is it was a solid conductive material apart from one end, which was mesh. It did block out the frequencies really, really good. I grounded it properly. The negatives are you need to ensure you've got a fan at the mesh end to circulate air. It doesn't look good, it's very unsightly. And that's it really, breathability and aesthetics. When you're going through an extreme EMF reaction, I personally did not care what it looked like. It didn't bother me one bit, as long as I could just get some sleep and some respite. I did make in the beginning I did have a problem. I slept in the box, one end was mesh, and I found that I was having some difficulty breathing because obviously I'm in a kind of a solid box. So make sure you've got a fan at one end circulating, but that's another story, how to build the Faraday cage. So I'm going to put a link in the description, check that out. It's really, another benefit is cost. It's going to cost you way, way less. Bed canopies, there are companies out there that sell bed canopies. You've got to be careful because one, they're extremely expensive, and two, there's a lot of jargon out there. They say that bed canopies are 99% protection. Actually, that's kind of electrical jargon that a lot of these companies do to sell you this stuff. 99% protection, I actually worked out, is probably more like 10. When it says 99.9, that's like 15%. 99.999, that's like 25%. So they add these nines on the end, which kind of goes up in like 10% how powerful it is at blocking them out. So you got to be careful. I was just so ill. I ended up buying an expensive bed canopy. It cost me £1,000. It said 99% protection. I thought, wow, that's amazing. Got it. Didn't really feel much of a difference. Then I realised that the bed canopy didn't deal with the low frequencies. So really, I spent £1,000 for like 10% reduction in frequencies hitting me. It was a real scam. So be careful. I do recommend, there is some bed canopies out there by a company called Aronia, which is Aaronia. They have the best bed canopies, in my opinion, on the market. You've got to ensure that they've grounded. Some bed canopies, just designed for radio frequencies, which you don't get the benefits of low EMF frequency protection. The Aronia bed canopies do that. You've got to ground it properly. Obviously, if you build your own Faraday cage like what I did, that also protects you from the low frequencies, but that's a problem. A lot of people think that the radio frequencies is the only issue involved here. That is not the case. I thought I just need to get away from Wi-Fi block, all that sort of stuff. Then I got myself in the bed canopy and I could feel the reduction in the higher frequencies, but there was something else. I was like, oh, what's this? Like, I could feel this other feeling even more because like a layer had been reduced a little bit. I was like, oh, what's this feeling? Turned out it was the low frequencies that was coming through. So that's just a warning there for bed canopies. You've got to be really careful. I do have some high quality bed canopies in stock. I ended up buying some a few years back. So if I do, send me a message if you would like to buy one. I don't have many in stock at the moment. So if you're looking for a very high quality one, just send me a message. I might be able to sort you one out. Next thing, using a computer. Now, I was a web designer. I couldn't really get away from... Being a web designer was very good for my healing. Well, it was very bad for EMFs, very good for healing in the fact that I could earn a good amount of money and I could work from home, so I could heal. The downside is I need to use a computer. I've tried many methods. Sitting away from the computer definitely helps. Using a wired keyboard and mouse definitely helps. Making the screen bigger to view things farther away. All this stuff definitely helps, but it didn't really... I was still struggling. I could still feel the effects. It was not a nice thing to do. So the best thing to do is to use a projector. You buy an LCD projector. Again, I have got a video on this, so I will pop this in the links on how to use a computer when you've got EMF sensitivity. So I'm not going to go into too much detail, but you buy an LCD projector. You make sure you've got an Ethernet cable plugged in, and what you do is you connect your computer up to the projector. Keep the projector and the computer quite far away from you so you're not feeling any frequencies, and then you use plug in a wired keyboard and mouse. And so basically I would have a wired keyboard and mouse at this desk. I would have my computer somewhere out of my distance, connected to an LCD projector, and I would shine the computer screen at the wall, so I'm not looking at any EMFs. I'm just looking at the light that the LCD projector is shining onto the wall, and I use a wired keyboard and mouse. You can get really low wired keyboard and mouses. You can buy them from lessemf.com, and that was by far the best way for me to use a computer. By far, I couldn't feel any frequencies whatsoever. The only frequencies I was experiencing is the wired keyboard and mouse, but I couldn't feel them. They were low. They were giving off low frequencies. So that's the best thing to do, is to use a projector by far. As I say, I've got a video on how to do that, so I'm going to pop that in the description of this video. Make sure you're using natural furnishings, on curtains, on walls, etc. These unnatural furnishings tend to pick up static, so you want like anti-static furnishings if you can. Use natural materials, natural wool, natural cotton, leather, etc. These are way better in your house. Also, you got to be careful with chemicals and off-gassing and all that sort of stuff. That's not really EMF frequencies, but it's going to affect your health if you've got off-gassing coming from new furniture, synthetic fibres, paints, wallpaper, glue, all that sort of stuff. That's all chemically based, so you want to be careful around that, because most people who've got EMF sensitivity also have some sort of chemical sensitivity as well. So just to make you aware of that. Now, there's a few things that I've used over the years that I would personally not recommend, that I know a lot of people recommend in the EMF sphere. These are the things that I don't recommend. So ground mats. A lot of people recommend ground mats. Basically, a ground mat is just a piece of conductive material that is, there's a wire that's fed down to the ground. So any electricity will hit the ground mat and basically go out and be, neutralized by the earth. Now, the problem with ground mats is if you're stood on a ground mat, what's going to happen is all of the stray frequencies in the environment are going to pass through you and hit the ground mat. I personally don't think that's a good idea. I've tried ground mats and I could definitely feel all the frequencies moving through me, so I wouldn't recommend that, to be honest, especially if you don't understand the frequencies that's surrounding you in your environment. Even if you think that you have lowered your frequencies, you'll be surprised at some of the electricity that's coming from the walls, etc. So ground mats, in my opinion, is a no-go. Be careful with protecting anything in general. If you're creating a Faraday cage around a computer, or you want to protect certain things, putting aluminium foil around a router or whatever, you have to be careful, because if that's not being grounded properly, you'll potentially turn that electrical emitting thing into like an antenna. You'll increase the frequencies rather than decrease it. So grounding is super important. Grounding is basically having a conductive material and connecting another conductive material to it. So imagine if you've got like a router, for example, and you've wrapped it in tin foil. If you just leave it like that, the electrical frequencies, the EMFs in that router will hit the tin foil and basically amplify it. Think of like a radio antenna with the aluminium aerial. The longer the aluminium aerial gets, the better the signal. And I remember when I was younger, to get a better signal from the radio, I would wrap it in tin foil. Basically, it acts as a bigger antenna. So you need to ensure that this thing that's been wrapped in aluminium is properly grounded to the earth. So you need to kind of connect that aluminium foil to maybe an aluminium wire that travels down and into the ground outside. You can use like an aluminium pole or a copper pole, a copper rod, drive it into the ground and connect it on there. But you need to be careful, that connection needs to be really pure. You need to ensure that the aluminium rod is not being oxidized or anything like that, so the connection's pure. So you've got to be careful in general with grounding anything, because you can cause yourself problems. Another issue people run into is that a lot of plugs, I know in the UK we have a 3-pronged plug, and the top plug is a grounding plug. So technically that top plug, it should be grounded to the earth, but there's a lot of electricians that don't do a good job in your house, and a lot of people's plugs, unfortunately, these days are not grounded. So sometimes a person will try to ground an appliance by connecting a ground cord to the ground plug socket in someone's house, and that plug socket's not being properly grounded, so you don't actually ground anything. Also, a central heating system technically is meant to be grounded, so a lot of people will try and connect a ground up to the central heating system, and the central heating system turns out that that's not grounded. So you need to really get an electrician to check all that out for you, to ensure that your plug sockets are properly grounded, to ensure your central heating system is also properly grounded, because that can also, you can run into problems with that as well. Mattresses, a lot of mattresses have metal coils inside of them that connect to an antenna, which is a shame. When people get Faraday cages or bed canopies, they'll get, and they're inside the bed canopy, they think they're all secure and they think they're not getting hit by any EMF frequencies, but then the mattress is actually, under what they're sleeping on, it has metal coils, aluminium coils, or copper coils or whatever, probably not copper, but aluminium coils, and they're creating like an antenna. So that can be a problem for people and they're not aware of it. Be careful with, obviously, like there's things like EMF paints, which you can paint your house, and apparently that can stop the EMF frequencies. Again, one is off-gassing. I think a lot of these paints are very chemical ridden. That's probably going to not be helpful for your health. And another issue is if you create, let's just say you end up painting a full room and you create a Faraday effect. If you forget, or if you basically forget, or you have a mobile phone in there, for example, or something that's letting off electricity, actually that electricity is going to bounce off the walls and you're going to get hit by it. Obviously you can't paint windows, etc. If you've painted your room with paint, you've created a Faraday cage, but you can't paint the window and you've got EMFs coming through the window, it's just going to be bouncing off the walls and hitting you. It's kind of creating an even bigger effect. So that's something to be aware of. Also, another thing I wanted to point out is that Faraday cages, although they probably needed, and I definitely needed a Faraday cage when I was healing, you probably need to be sleeping in a Faraday cage to allow your body the respite to detoxify all the stuff that's causing EMF sensitivity. But if you put a biological being, a human, an animal, a plant, inside a Faraday cage for prolonged periods, that can actually be detrimental to your health. So in my opinion, if you created your house as like one big Faraday cage and you're living in it, I don't think biologically that is healthy for you. It does mess with your body's a natural electrical system. It does mess with various subtle energies that the body uses, and it's not good. A simple experiment is putting a plant biology inside a Faraday cage, and after a while it does basically die. So I don't think it's a good idea to be living in a Faraday cage. Personally, it's probably good, and I did this and my clients did this, to sleep in a Faraday cage just to give your body that respite. But I would get out of the Faraday cage in the morning and ensure that your house is EMF free is an ideal thing to do. An ideal thing to do is probably to go and live out in nature or whatever with tents and stuff, but I understand the logistics of that is difficult. And if you're living in somewhere like England like I do, it's really cold over the winter and stuff, so that's going to be an issue because we need warmth to heal. So there's other things that people sell on the internet. I don't really think that they're very powerful. I would call them subtle help for EMF frequencies. Things like organite crystal, organite pyramids, crystals, pendants, Q-links, etc. I don't think they're detrimental, but I don't really think they're powerful enough for you to really overcome EMF sensitivity. Buy them if you can. I don't think they're detrimental, but I don't think they're going to solve the issue. You need something way more powerful, like the Nutritional Balancing Program, combined with things like Faraday cages and getting away from EMF frequencies and getting out into nature and stuff. So, if you want to buy organite, if you want to buy various crystals and pendants, etc., then by all means check him out. But I don't personally think that they're very powerful. They're more like subtle healing modalities. Alright, so that's it for protection. In short, the best thing to do is just to get away from it. Simple as that. Try and get a Memon. Memons are really good. And try and build a Faraday cage for your room. Probably a good idea to go over this section quite a few times just to try and get everything in your head. Because because it is going to be very important to understand what's going to be beneficial for you to use to get away from EMF frequencies, and things that are actually probably going to make things worse, unfortunately, even though on the internet it says that they are good things to do. Alright, so I hope that's enlightened you a little bit, and look forward to seeing you in the next section. Thanks for watching. So in this section I'm going to talk about healing. Now, healing is extremely difficult in my opinion for people that suffer from EMF sensitivity, and one of the reasons being is that healing the body for these individuals has to be extremely precise. It's one of the good reasons why we have the hair mineral analysis test, because we can see exactly how a person is and how to rearrange their body chemistry, not only for them to become more healthy, more energized, but also to remove all the stuff that's causing the EMF sensitivity and to balance things out, like the calcium shell, etc., and all the heavy metals and stuff that's mainly causing these issues. Now, a lot of healers and naturopaths and doctors, as much as I feel like they've got amazing intentions, a lot of the times that they don't really use something like the hair mineral analysis test to guide a person through their journey, and you definitely get shortcomings. I'll give you a quick example. There are two patterns on hair mineral analysis test. One of the pattern is called a 4 lows pattern. This is where calcium, magnesium, sodium and potassium are all below their ideal ranges on the hair test. And another one is called a 3 lows pattern. So basically only 3 of the 4 macrominerals are below ideal and 1 is above. Now if you was to go to a doctor, a naturopath, whatever, anyone that's not doing hair mineral analysis, you will have 2 clients and they will basically have the same symptoms, and both of them will, can have EMF sensitivity, usually extreme EMF sensitivity when they're in these 2 patterns. However, if you was to give, and usually what they will do is they will, more the holistic therapist, they will say, okay, you've got adrenal fatigue, you've got thyroid issues, you've got heavy metal toxicity, your oxidation rate is slow, or your metabolism is slow, and they'll kind of give them stuff to support the glands, support the adrenals, B complex vitamins that support the adrenals, that kind of increase metabolism, adrenal glandulars, thyroid glandulars, these sort of things that kind of stimulate the body, kind of support the adrenals, support the glandulars. Now, unfortunately, a lot of people, what would happen if you're in a 4 lows pattern and you used to get that information, you'd get worse. It would make you feel 10 times worse. If you was in a 3 lows pattern, that could actually make you feel better, although the 2 people have got the exact same symptoms. A 4 lows pattern is very, very, very common. In fact, a lot of people that are in EMF sensitivity suffer from something called 4 lows, and no one knows about it. No one understands how to heal it. And in my opinion, it's a medical breakthrough, is what we do in Nutritional Balancing, is to help people who are in 4 lows, because many, many people are in 4 lows now. 4 lows is basically complete burnout of the body, and you don't stimulate a person to get them out of 4 lows. You don't support the adrenal glands. As much as you would think that's what you should do. Obviously, if you've got adrenal fatigue, you've got thyroid issues, then have adrenal glandular, have thyroid gland. But no, that doesn't work for people in 4 lows. You've actually got to do something else. You've got to basically put a lid on things to actually slow a person down even more, believe it or not. And what you've got to do is it's basically like restarting a computer. You've got to shut down the system, and after a while, when the body's ready, when it's gathered its firewood, it will start the system back up again, and they'll come out of 4 lows, and then you can give them adrenal glandulars, thyroid, all that sort of stuff. So this is one of the things why it's so important to have a hair mineral analysis test. I do that. I'm a nutrition balancing practitioner. If you want to start, then just send me an email, Lewis, Lewis, at deephealingspace.com. My email's in the description. And that's one of the big reasons why people don't heal. Another big reason is people don't understand stuff like copper toxicity. It's very, very unknown, even in the holistic community, but it's a massive, massive issue for people suffering with EMF sensitivity. Balancing out copper is not easy. In many ways, the Nutrition Balancing Program has is basically a copper balancing program. That, you know, they are so informed on copper toxicity, and even with such a precise program that's been developed for 40 years, still balancing out copper is difficult. So for those who are not on this program, from my experience, it's almost impossible for them to fully recover from EMF sensitivity. Other things are understanding things like yin and yang. Yin and yang are basically just ways of talking about balance. But the main issue today is the whole world is more yin. You know, yin and yang, you know, hot and cold, you know, air and earth, you know, the whole universe is based on balance. So yin and yang is not some airy-fairy thing, it's actually just a way of talking about balance. Now the issue is these days that the earth, and EMFs especially, are very what we call yin. Everyone's got yin, the frequencies are just making the body very yin. Heavy metals, in, you know, by themselves, are yang. You know, yang is hot, yang is dense, yang is grounded. Yin is quick moving, it's chaotic, you know, it's feminine, you know, it's creative, all that sort of stuff. Right lane, left brain. But when the yang toxic metals go into the body, they cause chaos, they cause the body to be more yin. So what we need to do is we need to make the body more yang. Everyone's yin today. Sugars, very yin, you know, simple carbohydrates, very yin. So the body's very yin, and we need to make the body more yang. But the problem is a lot of people will do healing modalities that are yin, and they don't work too well, which is really difficult for me to hear, because I can see that these people are trying. Some of the yin things are things like juicing. Juicing's really, really yin. It tends to make people feel worse. Unfortunately, veganism promotes yinness. Things like prolonged fasting is yin, and whenever anyone tends to do that sort of stuff, especially when they've got EMF sensitivity, they find it very, very difficult to heal. I've seen that happen like loads and loads of times. So we need to be more yang. We need to do something that are yang in nature, which is what I'm going to talk about in this program. So the guidelines I'm going to give you are just general guidelines, because they're not based on a hair analysis test. So I can't give you the you know, if you was to get a program, it will be way, way more specific to you as an individual. But what I'm just going to do is I'm just going to give you a brief overview that you can actually incorporate or think about. If I thought it was a life or death thing, I wouldn't give out this information, but it will get you on the right tracks, 100%. So the main aspect of the nutritional balancing program is, and what I'm going to do is, because it's quite big, I'm going to put some information in the description on this program, so you're going to get more information. So basically the diet is 80% cooked vegetables. Cooked vegetables is really, really alkaline. We find cooked vegetables are more yang. This is why we don't promote raw vegetables like a lot of people do, because they're more yin. It's harder for people to heal. So we promote 80% cooked vegetables, hundreds of phytonutrients, very, very mineral rich. And we want people to eat a lot of these. You know, we want people to eat between 8 and 13 different varieties of vegetables every day, and have 3 big meals of vegetables. We find that that's the most healing, the most yang, especially for balancing out things like copper, and for just providing people with a lot more nutrients. People are just so malnourished these days that it's really, really difficult to get all the nutrients the body needs. Another thing that we recommend is proteins. So we recommend things like lamb, chicken, sardines are very, very good. We don't like big fish because it's full of mercury these days. So around 15% of each meal should be protein based. We like dark meat chicken and turkey, lamb, organic ground beef, eggs are good, sardines, almond butter. As I say, more information is going to be in the description on this. You know, each person's different, so this is generalized. Some people can't eat eggs, for example, because they're sensitive to it. Be careful for anyone that's suffering from cancer and whatnot. I don't really recommend this information to cancer sufferers, especially eating meat is probably not a good idea for cancer. But this is just a general overview. You know, one important thing that you can't know without doing a hair analysis test is whether you're a slow or fast oxidizer. So for slow oxidizers, we don't recommend adding any extra fat and oil, but if you're a fast oxidizer, we recommend having 2 tablespoons of fat and oil per meal, which will just bring down your oxidation rate a little bit. But if you're following these instructions and you don't know your oxidation rate, I would just stick to the slow oxidizer instructions. So don't add any extra fat and oil onto your food. As I say, I will post a link to this in more detail if you want to do this without a hair analysis test. We do recommend some grains. One good one we recommend is something called blue corn chips. They tend to be very, very good for your healing. You can pick up a packet of blue corn chips from various health food stores. You want to be having around 4 to 5 bags of chips per week, which will allow you to get the grain foods. We also recommend things like millet and quinoa. But again, this is very individualized. Some people can't have that much grain because they're sensitive to it. So you need to be careful of stuff like that. If you're sensitive to carbohydrate, if you've got sugar sensitivities, then you probably want to reduce in your grains quite a bit. Even the same with vegetables. Like, I have to get some clients are so sensitive. I was the same. I was so sensitive to carbohydrates and sugars that I had to cut out carrots, peas, swede, anything that's got like high sugar content in vegetables can be a problem for some people. So that's why it's a good idea to get out to find a practitioner, especially when you go through like crazy symptoms and healing reactions that are difficult to understand sometimes. We also recommend a bit of sea salt. Again, this is going to be on the information I'm going to post on the link. A good one is Hawaiian bamboo jade sea salt. Now, this is a shock to a lot of people, and this is one of the reasons why I feel like the program is very, very unique and specific and precise. We don't recommend fruit. One of the reasons being is most people suffer from sugar sensitivities these days, so eating fruit, incorporating fruit into the diet is actually not a good idea. Also, it's very, very yin. If you think about it, it grows high. It grows in hot environments, so you need yin foods. So it's really yin. It doesn't really help with anyone that's suffering from EMF sensitivity. Drinking water, we find that spring water is the best water to drink. Second best is a carbon filtered tap water. A good filter is called a Berkey water filter. It's a carbon filter. We recommend drinking about 3 litres per day. So there's a lot more information in terms of what vegetables and all that sort of stuff. I'm not going to go into it now. Things like using a pressure cooker is really good for vegetables. Things like not cooking oils and stuff. But I will pop this all in an article on our website. All right, lifestyle. So you want to be resting the body. The body's ill. The body's tired. The body's exhausted. Your lifestyle needs to change. If you're running around all the time, that needs to stop. You need to get in bed for 9 o'clock every night. You need to have gentle exercise. You need to just be relaxed and calm and go for gentle walks. Reduce sexual fluid loss. That's going to slow you down quite a lot. Get out in the sunshine. Just calm your whole life down. Chew your food thoroughly. Take naps in the afternoon. You need to go into healing mode. You need to go into rest mode. Look at an animal. Look at a lion. Look at a dog. They're not running around all day like humans do. They're rested. You need to rest and allow the body to re-nourish itself, allow the body to detox. It's the only way to deal with this stuff. So you really need to get out of this fast-paced mentality like a lot of people have. Try and reduce your toxic exposure. Try and get metal amalgams from your teeth removed. Stay away from recreational drugs, which is a massive no-no. Stay away from most over-the-counter drugs. If you're on the program and we do recommend people to try and reduce their drug intake, but please see a doctor and always consult your doctor when you're doing that. But in general, we find that most people on the program can slowly reduce their drugs. It's good. This is one of the reasons why it's good to work with a practitioner, because they can look at what you've been taking and how to help you reduce all that sort of stuff. So we recommend nutritional supplements in nutritional balancing. We find that it's very important. I'm going to list the supplements that we recommend. So one is trimethylglycine. Trimethylglycine is extremely good at removing toxins, extremely good at healing the liver, which is very, very important for balancing out copper with the EMF individuals. I'm going to put all the dosages in the link, but women can take up to about 1,000 milligrams a day, men take up to about 3,000 milligrams a day. Megapan is a product by Endomet Labs. We recommend that. You got to be careful with Megapan, because if you are a fast oxidizer, this is probably going to not make you feel good. So again, I would probably skip the Megapan unless you've got a hair mineral analysis done by a correct lab. I would only use ARL labs in Phoenix, Arizona, or Trace Elements. I personally use ARL, or all my clients use ARL. They're the best ones, but probably not a good idea to take a B complex vitamin unless you know whether you're a slow or fast oxidizer. Kelp capsules. Kelp is so good for EMF individuals. I can't stress how good it is. It got to a point in my healing journey where I could turn off my EMF sensitivity using kelp capsules. That was quite an astounding moment when I could do that. We do recommend kelp wrap, which I'll talk about a little bit more. I can't stress enough how important kelp is. Nature's Way is a really good brand. We recommend taking up to 6 capsules per day. Omega-3 fatty acids, fish oils, extremely important for people these days, especially when we try and get people to stay away from big fish. You need about 1,000 milligrams per day of fish oil. Vitamin D is another big supplement people need. People just can't get enough vitamin D, unfortunately, from the sun. You should be taking about 4,000 to 5,000 units of vitamin D per day. Another good one is calcium, magnesium, zinc, and selenium. Everyone needs these supplements. Even if you've got a calcium shell, you need good quality calcium, magnesium to help the body heal, to protect itself from stress. Zinc is an excellent antagonizer for copper. You will not balance out copper if your zinc levels are not replenished. And selenium is a very, very high quality mineral people need these days. Most people need about 750 milligrams of calcium. Good quality calcium, 450 milligrams of a good quality magnesium product, around 20 to 30 milligrams of a good zinc product, and 100 to 200 milligrams of selenium. Micrograms of selenium. The best form of these are chelates, lactates, citrates, and other high quality minerals. If you was to start the program with me, I would recommend specific brand of supplements you can use, which are very, very high quality. You also want to be getting a powerful digestive enzyme. The one that we recommend is again by Endomet Laboratories. It's called GB3. It's an oxbile and pancreatin enzyme, excellent for digestion. Most people have got terrible digestion who have got EMF sensitivity, so that's something that we really, really recommend people do. Alright, next section is detoxification procedures. You will not, in my opinion, heal from EMF sensitivity unless you detox all of the nasty chemicals and metals from the body. Now, in nutrition balancing, one of the most powerful ones is sauna therapy. Now, this is a problem for people who've got EMF sensitivity, so be careful. We recommend the near-infrared sauna therapy lamps. You can buy these from Harwed stores, the 250 watt single red lamps. They're used in chicken coops, etc. to heat up chickens. Now, the EMF that's released from these things is extremely low, so you could test it out. Just buy one bulb, they're around $15, and just see how you react to them. But yeah, in general, it's sometimes difficult for EMF sensitive individuals, but I work with people across the spectrum, so people that are not suffering from EMF sensitivity can use the saunas, but they are very, very powerful. But The best thing for EMF individuals, if they can't do that, is daily coffee enemas. Now, coffee enemas, as soon as people hear the word, they get all squeamish. They don't like the idea of it. It's a very taboo subject, but I can guarantee you now it is a lifesaver for a lot of people, and especially people that are suffering from EMF sensitivity. Again, more information is going to be in the description. But I will say one thing: if you check out my playlists, I have got a playlist for enema, a playlist for lifestyle, a playlist for diet, a playlist for saunas. All of the information is in there if you wish to do this by yourself. Go and check that out. Another powerful thing is the meditation exercise that we recommend. It's called the pulling down exercise. It's not really meditation, but it's a good way of kind of describing it. The pulling down exercise is a mental technique where you push energy downwards. You basically ground yourself as much as possible by imagining energy moving down the body. It really, really helps to detox the brain of copper, which is a massive issue for people who have got EMF sensitivity. It also helps deal with traumas. It's actually one of the most powerful techniques it's the most powerful technique we have actually in nutritional balancing, but a lot of people don't understand it well enough. I have a video called the pushing down exercise on my YouTube channel, so check that out if you want more information. The daily spinal twist is a chiropractic twist that helps de-twist the spine. Again, most people have got copper toxicity, which is the EMF individuals have very tight structures. Seeing a chiropractor is helpful. This twist is something you can do at home. Reflexology sounds trivial, but it's a very, very powerful way of healing and detoxifying. Reflexology is just basically massaging the feet. The body has a meridian system, and basically by massaging the feet, we live in a fractal world. The universe is made up of fractals, so you can massage the feet, and the feet correlate to different areas of the body, and they help detoxify. You'll be surprised how powerful reflexology is. Again, more information is going to be in the description. So that's basically it in a nutshell for the program. The program is huge. You know, when you're working with a practitioner, they can go into loads of other different techniques and modalities to help you out. Ozone therapy, hydrogen peroxide therapy, different things like Reiki, Rolfing. You know, there's loads of things that you can do to incorporate. That's the main structure of the program. That's what I'm going to give you in the description. But as I say, if you want to take things to the next level, you really need to be getting a hair mineral analysis test. Some tips for EMF individuals: we have something called a kelp wrap, which is an addition to the program. So I'm going to give you information on that. The kelp wrap is basically creating a kelp paste and putting it all over the body. It has many minerals that most EMF individuals are lacking. Especially it helps rebuild the thyroid gland, which is a big issue for people who've got EMF sensitivity. Get out in nature and ground yourself. Go for walks, go and swim in lakes if it's hot and clean. Get your feet on the ground. Try and wear trainers that are conductive. So wear sandals that are maybe made out of leather or some other conductive material that's going to allow this exchange of energy to go into the earth. Grounding is going to be extremely important for people who are suffering from EMF sensitivity. The pushing down exercise is a very good method of doing it. Saunas are excellent methods of grounding. There's not many methods around there. It's another issue that people have, that when they're trying to heal from this, they don't know how to properly ground themselves. I'm not talking about the electrical type really. I'm talking about the more energetic, mental type that people have. You know the feeling, you feel ungrounded, you feel mixed up, you know, you feel messed up. These are all linguistical terms that we've used throughout the ages to talk about people that are inside the head, you know, that are top heavy, that are not grounded. So grounding is a very important thing to do. Again, I do have a video on grounding. If you check out my YouTube channel, type in grounding, you will find a video on basically how to ground. So that's everything really. We do have changes for children, we do have changes for women that are pregnant, so if you're interested in any of that, then just send me an email. That's it for this short film, you know, deep dive into EMF sensitivity. If you would like to start a nutritional balancing program with me and get specific guidance, I would highly recommend it. please send me an email, which is Lewis, Lewis, at deephealingspace.com, or you can go through my website, deephealingspace.com. You can heal from EMF sensitivity. I've done it. Many of my clients have done it. I've come from an extreme background, but you have to be precise. You have to know what you're doing. This is a very, very precise method of healing. You definitely need something like the hair mineral analysis to see where you're at, what your problems are, and have it read by a professional. It's no good looking at a hair analysis test and just seeing each mineral high, low, whatever. Oh, I'm low in zinc, I'm high in selenium, I'm low in manganese. No, that's not how you read it. It's read as a book. It's read as a storyline. It's a story of your life. Well, it's a story of your life in the past 3 months. And it's really important. One thing I will tell you now is you will go through something called healing reactions. Healing reactions are very, very important to understand, and that's why it's so important to be around someone that truly understands healing reactions. If you check out my channel, you'll be able to see videos on this, but healing reaction is basically when toxins come out of a storage site into the bloodstream. Your symptoms might increase. You're probably going to feel not good. You're going to feel more exhausted, more tired, but this is a process that you're going to have to go through. It's a little bit like karma. You've kind of, whatever bad stuff you put in your body, you've kind of got to relive that. You kind of got to re-experience it in order to neutralize it out, to cancel it out. And that's healing reactions, and that's a big part of nutritional balancing program. If you're doing a healing program and you're not experiencing healing reactions, then that to me is a huge red flag. There's definitely something wrong with the program, because healing reactions are part of any good quality healing journey. Another confusing thing is a lot of people go through reactions and they think they're going through a healing reaction, but in reality they're getting worse, which is a big issue, which is why you need to speak to someone that truly understands what you're going through. Alright guys, thanks for watching. As I say, if you want to get in touch, Lewis, Lewis, at deephealingspace.com. You can also give me a call if you're from the UK or abroad. My number is 07961 805 129. If you ring me from abroad, just add the country code +44 and remove the 0. So it would be +44 7961 805 129. I'll be happy to speak to you about starting the program or any quick advice that you might need. Alright, thanks for watching. I'll speak to you all soon.